Good morning. Happy Mother's Day. In honor of Mother's Day, I'm going to tell you a couple of my mom stories. Not me this time, but my mom. Betty Elizabeth Moore. She went to glory about 2 years ago at almost 95, and she was famous for her hospitality, among other things. She was a woman who was genuinely interested in other people, and so she had many, many, many stories. I'll just tell you two little short ones today. When I was little, we were out shopping together. I do remember being with her. And when we came out of the store, there was a car there with a trailer hitched to the back, and it had out-of-state license plates. Well, later Mom told me that our pastor had just recently asked the congregation, you need to be courageous and brave and invite people to church. So that must have been niggling in her head. And she saw that the people were not in the car, so that's kind of the safe way. It's kind of like texting somebody in those days. And she pulled out a piece of paper out of her purse. And it happened to be a church bulletin. So she just wrote a note, and she said, welcome to California. I see you're from out of state. If you don't have a church home, please feel free to come to our church next Sunday. About that time, the owners of the car came up to us. And they introduced themselves. I'm wondering if they thought it was weird that someone was writing on their car, though I don't really recall if she was leaning over the hood or whatever. And they became acquainted, and Mom found out that they were missionaries home on furlough. And of course, they would be delighted to come to church. And then Mom invited them to the house for dinner. And then they said, well, they had a problem. They had a dilemma. They were going back to the field, and they needed someplace to park their travel trailer. So Mom and Dad just said, oh, you can park it in our backyard. We had kind of a back 40. So I remember that trailer being there for, 4 years. And that's just the way Mom and Dad were. Very generous with their lives and with their invitations and with their yard. So that's just one fun story of hospitality. If you're brave enough to invite someone to church, you might find that you make a new friend. The second story is about a time when they were much older, maybe 80s, and they were driving home from church, and Dad was driving too fast. And they were stopped by a policewoman who was about ready to give them a ticket. Mr. Moore, you shouldn't be driving this fast. And he was probably chuckling a little bit and being a little bit embarrassed. My mother got into the act because that's who she is, genuinely interested in people, and she started getting acquainted with the policewoman and found out this woman lived about 2 hours away, but that she was assigned to the Palos Verdes district, and so she had to work in Palos Verdes about 3 nights a week. And that was a long drive. She also found out that this woman was living with her boyfriend. Now, don't ask me how she found that out, but she did. And so my mother, genuinely concerned, said, so when are you going to get married? And the woman laughed and said, oh, marriage is not that important. It's just a piece of paper. And my mom quickly said, well, you were very interested in the piece of paper for our car registration just a few minutes ago. So a piece of paper is important. And then she said, and why don't you sleep at our house when you work in Palos Verdes? So the woman, I don't think gave my dad a ticket, came up to the house, and for about 3 months, and three nights a week, she brought her own sleeping bag so Mom wouldn't have to do the sheets. And they never saw her very much. She did shower there. And I felt good knowing that a policewoman was staying with my elderly folks. And that just shows you what God can do with a simple invitation and a piece of paper, and maybe a little courage. Why don't you make that invitation today? Thanks.